Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I do a motorcycle racing TV show, Team Chicago Challenge. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. I found this book, Carriages Without Horses, by Richard Scharsberg. Who also gave a speech at the 100th anniversary of where the first automobile race in America started.
My purpose here is to try to put this race in perspective in terms of why the race and why Chicago for that race. My inclination was to really keep it short and say what was the significance of the race. Well, here it is, right here. This is a booklet prepared by Frank Duryea, and it says, when Chicago introduced the automobile to America. That's why the race. This event, more than any other event that occurred at any other time, was responsible for opening the door on the auto age. It began here. It began in Chicago. The great significance of it is precisely that. Nearly every historian, nearly every auto enthusiast dates the auto age beginning in 1895.
So this story here is about Frank Duryea building, well, he was famous for building one of the first automobiles in America. In 1893, he had got the first engine running and the carriage running with a transmission that he made. In 1894, they formed the company. Duryea Motor Wagon became the first manufacturer of an automobile ever. So Frank was involved with the first engine. Didn't work at all. The second engine, he got it running with a spark plug with a proper ignition. The Chicago engine was the second car, and that was part of when the company was put together, and that was also called the Chicago car because that car won the race in Chicago. So it's a very interesting book. So I can't go to the Smithsonian and look at the first Duryea car. I don't think they'll let me crawl around underneath that car. And Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn also has a Duryea early car, but I don't think they'll let me crawl around. But I was out in California, and the California Auto Museum in Sacramento, they allowed me to crawl under and around a replica of Henry Ford's first car, which he built in 1896. It was a twin two-cylinder engine, chain drive, belt drive, and I'm going to show you all of that. Also in the museum in California, they have a replica of Benz's first internal combustion car built in Germany, but it was a three-wheel cart, and I'm going to show you a little part of that footage. We are looking at the Benz motor wagon that was built in 1886. I believe it's a single-cylinder engine. That horizontal wheel is the flywheel. It uses chain drive with a belt drive. Carriage wheels. It's a three-wheel cart with an internal combustion engine. As we look at Henry Ford's Quadricycle, he built this in 1896. It's a two-cylinder engine, again using carriage wheels or bicycle wheels. This was called a quadricycle. It's got an internal combustion engine, two cylinders, belt drive, chain drive, and we're going to get a little deeper into this quadricycle. As you can see on the Ford Quadricycle, it has got a chain drive, but it also has a belt drive. So as we look a little closer, we're going to see the chain drive to the rear wheel, and we're going to also see the tensioner for the belt drive. The tensioner is that wheel in the middle. You got the drive wheel next to the flywheel, that's all in red. And then the tension wheel is connected with this lever. This is the lever that Henry Ford would have grabbed with his right arm. It was connected to this rod that's right in front of us. That rod was connected to a shaft. As you can see, the lever is used to tighten up the tensioner on the belt. When the belt is tense, then it will transmit power to the chain. We're looking at this lever here, crosses over to the tensioner. So as it's moved forward or backwards, it puts tension on that leather belt. Then that leather belt puts power to the shaft, which then is connected to the chain drive towards your left. Now we're looking at the two-cylinder engine with the spark plug on either side and this crude but working ignition. You can see as the engine runs, there will be movement on the one shaft, and that will cause the collapse in the electrical system, and then the spark is fed to the spark plug. It looks like this engine has one or two valves, and the copper tubing above the two cylinders feeds gasoline to the cylinders. This is the end of one connecting rod to the flywheel. As you can see, as each cylinder fires, driving the connecting rod back, and then the flywheel will drive the connecting rod forward again. With the proper timing, the spark will go off, drive the connecting rod back. Two connecting rods, two cylinders. Ford used cylinders from a steam engine, made his own pistons. The pistons were connected to the connecting rods, and that would drive the flywheel. We are now looking at the gas tank and the gravity feed for the gasoline to the cylinder. There is no carburetor. He was probably depending on enough air being in the system to allow the gasoline to amortize. Also, you can see it has water cooling for the cylinders. As you look, let's look one more time at the flywheel and the connecting rods and the cylinders of Henry Ford's twin-cylinder quadricycle. And now we're looking at the Ford Model C runabout. The gas tank is in the front. The two-cylinder engine is underneath the seat. This was Ford's fourth automobile that he built. The first car he was involved with was the Cadillac, a single-cylinder. Then he built another twin-cylinder carriage-looking car. This would have been his fourth car. Right next to it is a K model 1907 Roadster that Henry Ford said it was too much car, too much power for two people. But a replica of this car did win a 24-hour race held in Detroit. This is the early Model T, the 1908, when Henry Ford decided to make inexpensive automobiles. You will notice that the steering wheel is now on the left. Came with a two-pedal arrangement, and only the first 800 Model Ts came with the two-pedal with the planary transmission. Now we're looking at a planary transmission. The pedal on the left was used for low and high gear. The pedal in the middle was the reverse pedal, and the pedal on the right was the brake pedal.
The brake for the Model T Fords was in the transmission. This system was used from 1908 through 1927. Now we're looking at the 1932 V8 Ford engine. This engine was an engineering miracle in 1932, making a V8 engine out of a single casting. And more information about the 32 V8 engine is on YouTube. Just follow this address on YouTube and you will learn about this engine. As you look at this V8 Ford engine, it had a single carburetor, and you can see by the color of the passages, the blue is the water passage. The gold represents the passage for the fuel from the carburetor to the valves. And then the red represents the passage for the exhaust. As you will see, the pistons and the water jacket around the cylinder, and the red represents the path for the exhaust from this 4-stroke V8 Ford engine. We're now looking at the rear end from a 1931 Model A Ford. Look at the technical engineering that went into this rear end, cutting these various gears and building a great set of bearings to allow the rear end to work properly and silently. And this is a scale model of the assembly plant. I believe this is made out of silver. You can see where the body was attached to the chassis. The chassis rolls down the assembly line, and the employees that Henry Ford paid enough money so that they could buy one of the cars that they assembled. And now we're going to head north to the California Railroad Museum. The California State Railroad Museum is right down the street. I'm going to show you a couple pictures of the outside. Right here in Old Sac, and I had the opportunity. I got invited in to shoot some of these great steam engines. Now you say, why is Dan going to steam? What is this? Well, if you want to understand the evolution from water wheels to generate power, power mainly before steam came from water wheels. Steam is taking water and making it work, adding fire to it. Adding heat to fire creates steam. So the early engines, the whole industrial revolution that took place in the 1800s were based on steam. The whole 1800s to 1900s were dominated by steam. Then the internal combustion engine took over during the 20th century. But the 19th century was a century of steam. And I want to take the opportunity to explain to you. So let's see what goes on in the California Railroad Museum, and we have a great time right here in California. We are looking at the C.P. Huntington. This is the first engine purchased by Central Pacific Railroad. C.P. Huntington was the first vice president of that railroad. This engine was built in Paterson, New Jersey in 1863. It was shipped around South America and assembled in Sacramento. It has 2 steam cylinders with a bore of 11 inches and a stroke of 16 inches, and this engine got 2-wheel drives and weighs 47,000 pounds. This engine was taken out of service in 1912, and at that point it was reserved. We're now looking at the huge cab-forward double locomotive engine, the largest engine in this museum. It was built in 1944 and ran through 1956. It's got 16 drive wheels complete. We see this huge crosshead running on a huge slide bar connecting rods, connecting the wheels, the push rod, connecting the slide bar to the main wheel, 16 drive wheels on this locomotive. Let's go back to the Team Chicago studios and talk about steam.
Back in the Team Chicago studios, I'm going to take a minute to explain how steam works, how the steam and the steam engines work. I wrote a couple notes down. It was James Watt that invented the steam engine as far as turning steam into rotary motion. But Watt did not use high pressure steam to drive his piston. He used low, he created a vacuum below the piston to draw the piston down. But he's the one that took motion, up and down motion, and turned it into rotary motion. And that's what you're going to see with these steam engines right here in the museum. So let me quickly explain steam. First of all, if you, and I'm showing you a pot of water boiling, you can see the water boiling, the bubbles on top of the water, and vapor is coming off. That is steam. There is no pressure, so the vapor can escape. But when I put the lid on the pot, and as you watch, you will see the lid start moving. That is steam pressure. Water is, with heat, water is expanded. When it expands, it makes power. So let me give you a brief rundown on how these steam engines work for these locomotives. First of all, you got your cylinder. And in your cylinder, in these steam engines, they have a small piston. Well, it's a huge piston, but they have a piston. Now, the old pistons did not have the modern pistoning. It's like a car engine. Some of them used rawhide as the piston rings to seal it against the cylinder. And then they had a piston rod, and the piston rod came out like this. So the idea with the steam engine on these trains is on the top of this cylinder, you had a feed of steam, and you had the steam going in one side of the cylinder and the other side of the cylinder. And as you look at these engines, they have a valve plate. Well, I'm calling it a valve plate. So there's a plate on the top here. It could be a plate just like this with one hole in it. And this plate moves back and forth to allow steam in this side. So when the steam goes in this side of the cylinder, it pushes the piston back. When it reaches this side, steam goes into this side of the piston and pushes the piston forward. So on these engines, you have a double action. The piston moving, got steam on one side of the piston, got steam on the other side of the piston. That's moving this piston back and forth. And then the key with the rotary motion. You got this piston rod is then connected to this other piece. You got this slide here, you get the slide mechanism here, you got the bridge there, and this is pushing. This goes forward and back, and then this upper slide is then connected to the connecting rods, and the connecting rods then are connected to the wheels. So let me draw from the side what these engines are looking like. Say if you have 4 wheels being driven or 6 wheels driven, and you got the pistons here, you got your slide mechanism here, you got the rod coming out of the piston is here, you got your cylinder here, you got steam going in, coming down, it's being rotated back and forth, steam is put in here, steam is put into this side of your piston. The piston rod is connected to the bridge, which is connected to the slide mechanism. This mechanism here is then connected to the connecting rod. And as you notice, this is where you get to our rotating of the wheels. You got the connecting rod here, and it's offset. Here's the center of the wheel. This is the offset. By having it offset, then the wheels also become part of the crank mechanism, or part of the rotating mass. So the reason that the connecting rod connected here to the side mechanism and then comes back to the wheel, this creates the flywheel effect. And the rotating mass is your flywheel effect. So not only is the steam going in here, steam going into one side of the cylinder, steam going to the other side of the cylinder, moving the piston back and forth, you also have the flywheel effect of the wheels. Now these wheels are big, huge, heavy wheels. When the connecting rod is pushing, all right, let's put it on because the wheels are going this way. So the connecting rod is pushing, this rod is being pushed, is pushing this wheel around this way. Also, the power of the wheel by having the center of the wheels here, where the connecting rod connects here, and this makes the wheel a flywheel. So as the wheel comes around, it is also driving the power of the wheel. The wheel is your counterweight. The counterweight of the wheel is also pushing the cylinder back. So it isn't just the steam pressure moving the piston this way and this way. It is also the flywheel effect of the wheels are pushing the piston forward and then coming back. So all this has got to be timed together. So you've got the connecting rod coming here, connecting rod to the wheel. As it turns the wheel forward, it's also then pushing this forward. And then you got these other wheels are connected, and they may be offset also. So as the wheels are moving, you have this flywheel effect of the wheels, and you got the pistons moving back and forth, driving the wheels, and the wheels are also working. So it's a continuous rotation motion that is the extreme end. This is what a steam engine works on.
We are now looking at a piston that came out of a Pacific type locomotive. A locomotive that would have ran in the 1920s. Over 7,000 of these engines were built. It was a 462 Pacific type. This piston, and you can see these bands are holding in, could be the rawhide as the sealer against the cylinder walls. It's a 25-inch diameter cylinder with a 30-inch stroke. The wheels are 73 inches in diameter, and you can see this main connecting rod or push rod is close to 8 inches wide. Drive wheels are working as the counterweight given the flywheel effect. Over 7,000 of these engines were built. They weighed 300,000 pounds, and they could do 100 miles an hour. A Stanley steamer, a 1914 Stanley steamer automobile, and as they found, steam engine cars and electric cars could not compete with internal combustion, gasoline, or diesel cars.
And let me end this show by saying the Stanley steamer was a production car that sort of worked, but in order to get ahead of steam, you had to go out 15 to 20 minutes earlier to get a fire going in your car in order to make steam, and then your car could run. So it was not as convenient as an internal combustion car. And the Stanley steamer did have a land speed record car, so they could go very fast. But Elon Musk, who builds electric cars, and I think he deserves a presidential freedom award, that whole crew from those, because they are doing the most marvelous thing in my entire lifetime, finding all this waste and abuse in the government. But I am not a fan of electric cars. They are still dependent on steam. Electric cars got to get their power from somewhere, whether it's a nuclear power, whether it's gas-fired power, or whether it's coal-fired power. Electricity's got to be created using steam, and then it goes through wires all over the country, so there's a loss of the electricity as it goes through the wires. So when someone plugs in the car, they can't pretend that this is all clean energy. Somewhere, something, people are burning something to create the steam, to create electricity. And that's how I'm going to end this. And I'll mention I have a silly neighbor who has an electric car, and he goes to Starbucks every day, spends $10 to $15 for coffee. I spend 37 cents a day to fill my thermos. I have coffee for the entire day. And my coffee, 8 o'clock coffee that I make here, is as good as, if not better, than any cup of coffee you can buy in any Starbucks in America. Now don't forget my email. It's teamdan45@gmail.com. You know I always love to hear from my audience to let me know what you thought of this show about early cars and steam power.
As we see this photo and this painting, the joining of the Transcontinental Railroad at Promotory Point in Utah on May 10, 1869. For more information on the California Automotive Museum, go to calautomuseum.org. For the California Railroad Museum, it's californiarailroad.museum. I had a great time at both of these museums, and I learned quite a bit. To contact me, and I love to hear from my audience, it's teamdan45@gmail.com. And remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action, Dan Schmitt Politics, to learn what makes America great. And I highly encourage you to visit the World of Motorcycle Museum in Winamac, Indiana. They're on Indiana Highway 39, 4 miles south of North Judson, Indiana. But give them a call first at 574-896-3172. It's a great trip and a great collection of motorcycles. To pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package, go to Rich's Yamaha in Lockport, Illinois. But give them a call first at 815-838-8130. Their website is richesyamaha.com, and pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package. And if you want to learn everything there is to know about motorcycles, there's nothing like going to a swap meet. Here's a list of swap meets put on by Buzz Walneck, my good friend. We got Princeton, Illinois, Monroe, Michigan, Springfield, Ohio, Morris, Illinois, and Woodstock, Illinois. Remember, it's walneckswap.com.